I jumped on around 10 and I was listening to Beth talk about the guide and the program. And I just told Christine and Heidi, I was getting chills. If you want to open up my presentation, and I can talk about like who I am. I'm a pediatric audiologist. I'm at a children's hospital in San Diego. And I also started my own thing this past year with COVID. Um, I was on maternity leave and I missed connecting with my patients. Uh, I have bilateral hearing loss myself. I was fit with hearing aids when I was about 3 years old. Back in the 80s, they didn't do hearing screenings. So I was diagnosed with a mild hearing loss at age 3 to 4. My mom said, and my preschool teacher said I just kind of snuck off on my own during story time, either to sing my own songs or read my own books. And I got hearing aids pretty soon after that. For me, my hearing loss was progressive. Every time I bumped my head, I have enlarged vestibular aqueducts, and I am now a bilateral cochlear implant user. You can go ahead and present. So I'm also a mama of 2. I'm pregnant right now, so soon to be 3 kids. I'm also a military spouse. Mama Who Hears is the Instagram and website I started, and I'm putting together a program called My Child Has Hearing Loss, Now What? Something that hit home for me is when Beth said, meet your parents and your patients where you're at. I use this all the time in the clinic. If I have a child, say on the spectrum, or just scared of being in the sound booth, or scared of somebody else touching their ears, I take a breath, I back up, and I see, like, where are they? What's going on? If something's really scary, that's valid. Those feelings are valid. And I still have chills. Like, you're meeting the parents where they are. Where are they in this journey? You might have been in this journey for so long that you're familiar with the lingo, the feelings, and you have a certain strength that you're able to step back and remember where you were, or honor uh, basically honor where they're at. And then is where the empowerment of giving them that confidence, giving them validation of how they feel. They might be feeling, I have a family that uses ASL, but I want my child to hear. They might be in conflict with all these different kinds of different dynamics in the community. And as a parent, they get to make the best choices for them and their child that works with their family. I might be a professional in the field, but I really, really think that my job is to provide resources, ingredients for a recipe, so to say, so that they and their family can make the best choices for them. And I know that parents might not always find a healthcare professional that might feel that way. So it is so important, the work that you guys are doing. It is so impactful, significant, and it's like having a non-judgmental family member going alongside with them. And thank you so much for doing that. So without further ado, Cora sent me a few different questions from you guys covering technology and in the school system. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Heidi. One of the questions were, what is the technology out there? What are the differences between hearing aids, that's HA, a bone-anchored hearing aid, that's BAHA, and a CI, which is the cochlear implant? The first picture on the bottom is a traditional hearing aid, what you would typically expect to see, or what sometimes pops in people's heads when you say the word hearing aid. What does that look like? This is a machine on the back of the ear tied to a ear mold that channels the sound down to the ear canal. A bone anchored hearing aid or a bone conduction hearing aid, they're the same idea, not exactly the same thing, is that picture in the middle. The first 2 black little knobs can attach to an abutment or a magnet or a soft band and stays on the head, whereas that third one, it's still in the middle picture, but that third one has that bone oscillator. So these nub things are bone oscillators that vibrates the bone on the patient's head and that third one is just a more powerful one. So the processor and the battery are actually away from the oscillator and sends more signal. It's for a more significant type of loss. And then the third one on the right is a cochlear implant. They are both the same thing. They just look a little bit different. I'm going to go into more detail on the next slide. Typical hearing aids. So across the top, this is the first and the third one are the traditional ones, like I was saying, most people think of when they hear the word or see the word hearing aid. And at the very, very basic, a hearing aid is an amplifier. It can fit almost any kind of loss, conductive, sensory neural, and mixed losses. It is programmed for each individual ear. So I don't encourage children, this happens every now and then, to trade hearing aids and listen and see what theirs sound like, because what an audiologist does or a hearing aid dispenser can do is program that hearing aid at all different frequencies specifically for that person's hearing loss. There's a microphone on the back of the hearing aid that sits right up on the pinna, exactly right there. Some hearing aids have one microphone, some have two, sometimes a few of them have three. The sound is delivered into the ear canal. So with a hearing aid, with a traditional hearing aid, a patient, I don't want to say 100% absolutely needs, but they typically have that pinna or the ear, the external ear that most people are familiar is what the ear is. So there's an outer, middle, and an internal ear, as well as a patent ear canal. Some children either don't have, some people don't have an ear pinna or an ear canal, and those are the different types of hearing aids. There are different types of hearing aids that would go with that one. So now I just love all of the different colors that ear molds and hearing aids come in. I love it personally. For me, I'm just a bright person and I have almost no qualms if somebody asks me, hey, what is that thing in your ear? I take it as an opportunity to explain and just have a conversation with them. I love it when children get to pick their colors, because then they get to go to school knowing this is 100% mine. I picked this, I picked the colors, I get to put it on. It gives them a more sense of ownership and confidence when they talk about it, especially if they get to do a show and tell at school. The next slide talks about bone anchored or bone conduction hearing aids. There's 3 different ways that a person can wear this. But this is typically for hearing losses where the hearing nerve is intact, or at least one of the 2 hearing nerves are intact. Is there a reason why it went back to? Okay. I forgot my train of thought. Oh, 1 or 2 of the hearing nerves are okay, but sound is physically blocked from getting to that hearing nerve. It could be they have reoccurrent otitis media or ear infections over and over again. So if you imagine putting a regular hearing aid with an ear mold in that ear canal, it would be constantly getting clogged, and then covering that ear canal so that, you know, fresh air doesn't get in there just makes that ear infection even worse, or whatever fluid buildup there might be. Some children, some people are not born with a properly developed pinna or ear canal. Sometimes there's things going on with the bones inside there, or with the eardrum. It might be disrupted. So this picture is the skin and the skull with a screw. It's the first one of the second row. That one is called an abutment. When everything is healed over, that's what it looks like in the hair. What this bone oscillator or the nub can do, it can attach right to that. Children typically don't get this surgery until 5+ years. However, I have seen some children have had the surgery as young as 12 months. At my children's hospital, we typically just like to wait a little while to see how they do with the device, how they do with, number one, wearing it consistently, and the benefit that they get from it. So sometimes we just like to wait a little bit. On the bottom are two more options. The first two pictures is the company calls this a sound arc, kind of like a headband worn a little bit backwards, and there's pressure right above the ear on there, and it holds the bone oscillator or hearing aid close to that mastoid bone. So the mastoid bone is where the cochlea is housed, and you feel it right behind your ear. Or with the younger children, we do something called a soft band, just like a headband, and it holds it against the child's head. We need it pretty tight, but when they're young and wiggly, sometimes that doesn't always happen. They don't need a normal pinna or external ear or ear canal to be able to use this one. So then this option, again, is typically for conductive, sometimes mixed, or if you have a case of single-sided deafness, say somebody might have auditory neuropathy, something going on with the neural pathways in that child's head, and they have a normal hearing nerve on the other side, they can actually wear this option on one side, and the sound will travel through bone vibrations to the other good hearing nerve. It's really cool what technology can do. Go to the next slide. A cochlear implant is the second surgical option for a more severe hearing loss. It's more sensory neural, and sometimes high frequency. Right now, it's not FDA approved for children, but we do see off-label children where we are justifying it, or some of these children, they might be under 18, but they're 14, 16, that kind of age where they can have the conversation with us, be open to and understand the commitment that goes with a cochlear implant. I think having those discussions with families is very important, since these are surgical options. There's a lot more going on. I'd rather not implant a child who is not open to trying it or excited about it, because that device is just going to end up in a drawer by the bed. If they're on the same page, they know that there's a goal that they want, and this is one of the steps, more than likely they'll be willing to, number one, wear it as much as possible during the day, and do some speech therapy or rehabilitation to be able to utilize it as well. These are all pictures of different external processors. The bottom is an internal processor. So the cochlear implant is the skinny little electrode that is placed inside the cochlea. And the cochlea is actually maximum the size of your little pinky nail. So this little wire, you can't see it very well, but on the very end of it is just like a little curly Q of electrodes. The coil, I'll show you on mine. So here's the processor. I just wear an ear mold for retention. Sound goes into here. This part is a battery. Sound is programmed and processed in this computer portion, travels down the coil, and then this part, the magnet holds the coil up against that internal circle of the implant and transfers electricity through the skin, sending the impulses down to the electrode. If you unravel a cochlea, it's kind of like keys on a piano. It goes low pitches to soft pitches, and I get to program based on how they respond objectively and subjectively. When they start to talk or when they start to have good reactions, I can program how much electricity goes along that piano electrode, so to say, and fine tune as time goes on the sound that they receive based on what I'm getting from them. It's probably one of my favorite pieces of technology out there, because it's given me the details of life that add to my quality of life, which I just love. Conversation. I love being with people. I love learning, what do they like? What do they not like? And that can just add to a person's lifestyle if they so choose to go with auditory and spoken language, if they want to do that. The thing about the cochlear implant is that they cannot trial it. With a Baha, you can try it with a soft band. a parent can actually take a connector to that hearing aid and place it on their mastoid and see, wow, that's the sound that my patient or my son or daughter hears. With a cochlear implant, there's no way to try it. And because of that, there's a lengthy evaluation process. We want to take a look at how they hear without amplification, how they do respond to amplification, taking a look at scans. Is the hearing nerve intact internally? There's a chat question. Are there dangers such as rejection by the body of the magnet? I personally have never seen anything like that. It is covered in medical grade silicone, but I have heard about sometimes if the electrode or the implant, the processor part of the internal implant is not, I don't know what the right term is, but for lack of better words, tied down properly, it could recede out. I've only seen this maybe a handful of times in all the studies and patients that I've seen, none with our own surgeon. So the only danger that I would see happening is it just wouldn't work and we wouldn't get a response from it. So there isn't anything like the body getting sick or the body getting allergic reactions unless they're somehow allergic to silicone, medical grade silicone. Okay. There's 3 manufacturers for cochlear implants out there right now. And you cannot mix and match with which one you use. There are some patients who have one manufacturer on one side and another on the other side, but you cannot say put a manufacturer A processor onto a manufacturer B processor internal and it'll work because there's different technologies. With hearing aids, I don't mention how many hearing aid companies that there are. There's so many, but I do want to say it kind of echoes what Beth was saying is meet the parents where they're at. However, in this incident, this situation, I really encourage parents to trust in their audiologist with this. I actually don't want parents to be overextending themselves, researching all of the different manufacturers out there and what's available, because we're the ones constantly getting training. Probably once a month, we see a manufacturer, there's updates. The companies are always one-upping each other. Everything is always improving. So lean on us, ask them. I heard about rechargeable batteries. Is there an appropriate hearing aid for my son or daughter that has that option versus going with, I only want rechargeable batteries right now? I understand the convenience of that, but I would much more want the parent to work with the audiologist to find the most appropriate type of amplification that's out there hearing wise, if that's what they're choosing, as opposed to just going for something with rechargeable batteries, not getting a good clear sound, not having access to speech, and then probably not wanting to wear that device because it doesn't sound good. If that makes sense. Go ahead to the next one. Any questions so far just on that kind of covers hearing aids, BAHA, and CI in general. Okay. One of the second topics that was asked for me was about FM systems or remote microphones. Kind of like hearing aids, every company basically has their own system available that works with their hearing aids. Most, if not all of them, can work with other ones. So they have adapters. And I think manufacturers came up with this because of the school systems. Educational audiologists were like, we can't have a million different companies. Let's try to consolidate down to 1 or 2 companies that have adapters to work with all of these children's different types of hearing aids, because they're coming from all over the place if they move, or from all different types of audiologists. So on the top, those are 2 standalone microphones. Those are probably some of the newest ones available right now. This can be clipped onto a teacher or a speaker's shirt, as well as placed onto a table. and it knows if it's flat or if it's upright. So when it's placed onto a table, I can't remember that, like a surround sound microphone turns on, not focused. I'm losing the exact word right now. But all of those lines on that silver tan one are microphones, and they just kind of go out and pick up different speakers. Same thing happens with the black one. This is a mini mic or a multi mic, but this one just has one main microphone on the top with a few holes for directionality. The one under that one is the more common that you would see in schools. The teacher would wear this box on her hip, and then that little clip on the right of it is a microphone. I always encourage speakers or teachers to wear this device at least 6 inches away from their mouth so that they can hear. Is kind of difficult with masks in school. I've seen some teachers wear a shield, be able to show their visual or facial cues, and then the microphone is under there. They can do that. I know the Moog Center has a big shield with cloth around, and that can kind of help. Just so you know, there's all different types of remote microphones available out there. And the best is really working with your audiologist as well as your educational audiologist and see what is the school setting, what's available, or if you're fortunate enough, you can get some insurances cover the accessories, or you can private pay to have one at home. I prefer for students to work with the school since they can be on the same channel. A teacher can wear one microphone, and that phonic microphone in particular can sync up to 99 receivers. So it's 99 ears if they have that big of a classroom. And also, if the device were to break, the school would fix it versus your own private one that you want to use at home. On the bottom left, that old one, that's the one I wore in elementary school, is bulky, it's huge, it's a lot of weight. And I would go through 9-volt batteries like every 2 days. Technology has definitely improved since then. I don't know if Heidi, you wore something like that when you were younger. So those different devices, I love using them on bike rides, on walks, if I'm running with friends or playing tennis, so that it just really improves the signal to noise ratio. I hear that speaker, depending on the volume that I set it at, like they're sitting right next to me. And I hear that in both ears, and it just gives so much advantage for the children, especially noisy classrooms, or if they're at SeaWorld or just walking around an amusement park or at a restaurant at dinner time. It's just a great thing for them to be like, oh, I heard them, I'm in the car. I put my mini mic on my daughter's car seat so that I can hear her if we're on the highway or something, just to give me a little bit of an advantage. I can see her lips a little bit in the mirror, but I mean, children talk fast. Their voices are small, and she can only take it so many times when I say, what, could you clarify? And she's 3, there are limitations. So these are just extra accessories that are some of my favorites. Go ahead to the next one. Heidi, can the slide go? Oh, there we go. I did mention an educational audiologist. So somebody asked, what is an educational audiologist? An educational audiologist went to the same schooling as I did as a clinical audiologist. So they have everything under their wing. We studied the same, except they are specially equipped to work within the educational system. Their goal is to be able to look at everything that applies to a student's learning. That can be physical environment, like the classroom, making sure the classrooms are not as noisy, or they can make recommendations of putting ceiling tiles in, tapestries, or carpet to reduce echoing or reverberation in that room, facilitating what this child needs. Do they need more visual? Do the teachers need a training on how to, excuse me, speak to the child, face the child when they're talking? I was constantly raising my hand. Can you turn around when you're, or can you wait and hold on to your thought while you're done writing on the chalkboard or the whiteboard, and then look over at me? So he or she won't make recommendations if, say, your child has hearing loss on one side. If they have hearing loss on the right side, I would recommend that they would sit on the left side of the classroom so that their good ear is facing the teacher. A question that my friend, she's a teacher of the deaf, often gets is, well, I have a loud voice. It's okay if they sit in the back. Louder doesn't always mean better. Imagine if you went to a movie theater and they jacked up the volume too high, it actually gets distorted. It's not comfortable, it's not clear, and nobody wins. So an educational audiologist typically sees students, I wanna say at the very least once a month. Maybe they see each student once a week. They talk with the student, they counsel the students, they work with the students and the patients, the teachers, as well as the parents for what they need, what's working for them. They check if their hearing aids are working. So they see that patient or student a lot more than I might. Typically, I only see hearing aid patients about every 3 to 6 months, or as they get older, 6 to 12 months. So they're the ones I feel like that are constantly coaching them, holding their hand through school, checking in, being that active mentor and helper for them, as well as being a go-to person for them. I didn't have an educational audiologist, but I did have somebody who provided my FM system at school. She was the one that said, tell me if we need new batteries. These are where the batteries are. Just in case I'm not in my office, this is where you're going to get them. This is where you charge your FM system. Don't forget to leave your FM system at school. Don't bring it home. All of those different things. And then also, she was the person that I could go to, to tell, Mr. Benjamin has a big mustache and he mumbles, and I feel uncomfortable telling him I can't hear him, but I'm scared I'm going to get a bad grade in biology. She went to him, talked to him in a non-confrontal way at all. She was just saying, I'm noticing Michelle is having some trouble in biology. What can we do? How can we work together? And being an 8-year-old or a 15-year-old, she was much more equipped to seeing solutions at that time than I was, and being able to offer them and work with them together on there. Go ahead. A functional hearing assessment is kind of what I was saying. The educational audiologist or a teacher of the deaf will take a look at the learning environment, take a look at the seating charts, recommend preferential seating, recommend changes to the environment, recommend different types of technology. Hey, maybe, or we have extra money in the budget this year. How about for this classroom, we get a speaker system so that actually all of the students benefit from an FM system where the teacher wears a microphone. It could be gym class or a different language class. And then I often see them do in-services with the teachers, letting them know what it's like to have hearing loss, giving them examples so that they can relate, therefore spurring into the teacher's minds what else they can do. Facing the students, wearing a clear mask or shield, putting up more visuals. Maybe instead of saying the homework and having the kids write it down, having it somewhere on a bulletin board so that they can see it and not get confused or miscommunicated. Go ahead. These are just some of the resources that I have available. I started listing the other day. You guys are on that, of course. And you guys can have this PowerPoint if you want to. Go ahead to the next one. I have a few free downloadable guides on my on Instagram and my website. I'm also creating a course that kind of brings it gives the parents a roadmap and or the ingredients, I like to say, so that they can see someone, personal experience like myself or Heidi talk about it. I actually interview my mom with this. So a lot of these parents, this might be a great resource for them. It's coming out in August. And then I just wanted to open up the floor to any more questions that I can answer for you guys. You can ask personal questions or professional questions.
This is Heidi. I see Penny and then Valerie.
I have a question for you. Thank you so much. This is Penny from Nevada. As an audiologist, do you have a loss level or a hearing level where you would recommend a family start to learn a visual language?
The reason why I'm thinking about this a little bit longer is no, I wouldn't, because my children are hearing and I use sign language with them. I didn't learn sign language as a child. I wasn't exposed to it, but there is no evidence that having bilingualism in your family, whether auditory or visual language, will slow down the development of speech and language. A lot of times parents come home from, say, an audiologist appointment and they'll say, well, or if they have as severe of a hearing loss as that would need a cochlear implant or would be a candidate for a cochlear implant, they said, they told me not to use sign language. I personally don't agree with that. And it's kind of an old school way of thinking. You would think, oh, we're going to do one, don't do the other so your child can focus on that. My mom was told not to speak Chinese to me when I was diagnosed because they said, my English language wouldn't develop. There's no evidence with that whatsoever. In fact, it actually helps them. My kids picked up sign and then they started doing more spoken language, but it helped them so much more with tantrums, with communicating. And now if my child's mouth is full, she signs what she wants to me. So it's really cute. So I don't recommend, I don't have a hearing loss level at all. If anything, language first, just submerge them with language so that they have the communication, so that they have the ability to communicate with you.
This is Heidi. Thank you for that. Valerie?
This is Valerie. I wondered if you had any tricks for keeping the adhere stickers on.
Oh, what my rep has recommended, if needed, is wiping that skin dry and free of oil before putting the sticker on. I can't remember if they said shaving it is okay, but it doesn't have to go where the hair is. But honestly, stickers are the stickers' worst enemy is oil. And so that's from that skin. I would just kind of dry it maybe with an alcohol swab or a baby wipe, make sure it's actually dry, and then putting that adhere sticker on. It's tough.
Yes, thank you.
This is Heidi. I see Christine Tan.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't on mute. I just wanted to say thank you for the great information about the Baja type, devices. There's a person in my life right now, not one of my kids, where they have this ear infection, and having that kind of band that wraps around the back might be a good remedy for this person. So that was great. What was that called?
It's called a sound arc. It's
a sound arc?
Cochlear though right now, but okay. I wonder if the person in your life could take that idea if they have a different manufacturer and work with that. Maybe it just needs to be nice and snug against that mastoid bone.
Okay. Yeah, they're an adult, so and probably not going to do surgery. So anyway.
Yeah. I'm
Looking at that.
realizing now I spoke really fast through my slides. I have so much time.
This is Heidi. There is a chat from Liliana that says that she uses toothpaste tape.
For what? For hearing aids, Baha.
For hearing aids.
Okay, yeah. I like using it as well. I have some here. Some children have a lot of hair right behind the ear, and I have actually seen parents attach it to the pinna or the earlobe. That's an option. And yeah, whatever works for your children, do what works for you. And you know this, no parent, every child is different, every family is different. Figure out what works for you, and hearing your experiences or things that work for you are suggestions. You know, nobody has to do it the same way, however it may look. Cora.
This
Oh, sorry, Heidi.
This is Cora. I just also wanted to thank you about the mention of, using language, whatever, within your family. I think that that was such an important point that you made. I remember when my older son, who's 17 now, was identified, we were at John Tracy Clinic, and they was really pushing for families to use your home language, whatever that may be, because they have a large Spanish speaking community around their center. And we were there for about 22 months before we moved to San Diego. And the professional that we started working with, although I do believe she is good at what she does, I think her thought process was a little bit old school, as you say. And she said, my son was behind in language and we needed to pick a route. And my husband had been speaking his native language, to my son at the time. We obviously my little one wasn't born yet, so we stopped. And, now that connection isn't there with, extended family members that live in Pakistan. So I just really wanted to acknowledge that I appreciated that comment. And that's what I encourage people as well, because when you start with that baby talk, right, and you just kind of grow language from there, instead of like at 5 years old, all of a sudden, my husband trying to start speaking Urdu to him, it just didn't quite work out. But thank you for that. I just wanted to say I appreciated that comment.
It is really difficult sometimes because the different schools of thought kind of butt heads a little bit. But when you just sit down, say with an audiologist, and they were brought up in the school of thought of, no, we need to get them talking. We need to get them talking. That's their parents' goal. It might not necessarily be the audiologist, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. Maybe they heard that was your parents' goal. Okay. But all right, let's strip away all of those emotions and expectations of yourself, expectations of your child. And what is it? Even my pediatric audiologist, she is like, when that child has access to those sounds, okay, then let's work on speech therapy. And if they don't have access to that sound, how can you force the child to start saying the S sound when they can't even hear it? I went through so many hours and years of speech therapy, like, okay, I physically know how to do it, but do I do it 100% of the time? Absolutely not, because I couldn't hear it. Now with technology, cochlear implants, I actually check if they're on by doing the S sound, like, and it used to be so loud and annoying to me because I wasn't used to hearing that. When the patient or person has good access to speech, sounds of speech and language, then go for it. But if they're frustrated, 3-year-olds or 3 or 4-year-olds are having tantrums because they can't communicate with you, what do you want to do? Keep making them to go to speech therapy when they can't hear something? Or do you want to give them a sign, even if it's a made up sign that between you and your child, that they can say, stop, that hurts, or I'm hungry. So much less tensions and conflict right there.
This is Heidi. I don't see any hands, but I just wanted to make a comment. You know, 40 years ago, there weren't a lot of resources, and it was very old school way of thinking. And so my family was one of the families that was told, don't use sign. We want her to work on her speech, that kind of thing. And so we weren't privy to a lot of the resources growing up. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s that I made the decision for myself to learn sign language and go from there. And in the midst of my schooling, had my youngest daughter. And when she was born and did not pass her hearing screen, it was like, oh, okay, that's why I'm doing this now. And it actually was the first language I used in the home. And she started communicating at 9 months, telling me that she wanted bananas. And it was an amazing thing. So I think it's a matter of what works for the family. And if the family is able to even take that on of learning the language themselves, that's something that we always have to consider too. Because sometimes it's not so easy. I mean, I still have trouble retaining it sometimes. I have good reception, but I can't produce it very well. And I went all the way through the interpreting program and graduated. But it's just, it's what works for each individual family, but that's what worked in that moment. And I appreciate, just having all of those tools in the toolbox, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And I've been practicing for 12 years now. I've seen, mostly in the beginning of my career, families that, pushed a cochlear implant on their child, sent them away to deaf and hard of hearing schools that might have only used sign language. Well, then the families are broken apart. They have different languages. They can't meet on the same page. When you have the same language, a common language, your families are going to stay that much closer and intact.
This is Heidi. I see Valerie, and then we have something in the chat.
That's why I was going to read the chat. So it's from Christine. She said, could you share again who can best do a functional listening evaluation and at what age?
The person who can best do a functional listening evaluation is an educational audiologist, or if you have a teacher of the deaf in your county or your school district. A teacher of the deaf is a master's degree, and it's kind of fading out a little bit, but they, for lack of better words, and most of them are female that I know of, so I'm just gonna say king or queens of all trades. A lot of them are speech therapists in training, know a lot about audiology, know a lot about education, know a lot about child development, and they can do it as well. But the functional listening evaluation typically is the education audiologist, and at any age. It can be at any age from when they start school, preschool, kindergarten, all the way up to the school districts go till high school. But I had somebody working with me in college from that university's Office of Accessibility, taking a look at, those auditoriums, 300 students, it's really loud. What's going to work best for you? Preferential seating. If I was resistant to that, okay, then I used a cart. I got privileges to a cart provider when I was in college, and that was the best. That was amazing.
This is Heidi. I think I saw Delight's hand. Did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, my son is single-sided deafness, and it's always been interesting to meet people, the different opinions on, that hearing loss and single-sided deafness. Some people take the approach that, oh, it's no big deal. They got one working ear, it's okay. And other people are just kind of, they just don't understand what it's like. And I'm deaf myself. My husband's completely deaf. And we grew up with that. But having a single-sided deafness child is so different. His experiences are so different from my own. And it's been a very interesting journey. So how do you approach families that might have that kind of attitude where it's okay, they got one good ear, it's okay?
it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? And I can't relate to single-sided deafness, but one maybe scenario that is similar is I have cochlear implants. I do have access to sound within normal hearing range. However, out this morning, I spent an hour and a half. I got up, hung out. My kids weren't awake yet, started making breakfast. And then my husband's like, I was yelling at you down the stairs to do this. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I didn't tell you. I didn't put my cochlear implants on, you know? So it's the double-edged sword is you see what he is capable of out of that good ear. But say, what if he takes a nap on that good ear, can't hear anything, or is in a noisy situation and doesn't have his good ear facing, you know, effectively to be able to hear the speaker, or there's speakers on both sides and he hears one perfectly and the other one he doesn't. He's not ignoring that person by any means, or paying attention to the other one more for like intentionally or maliciously or anything. But it's, how old is your son?
He's almost 8.
Life is going to get tricky because he'll know, he will use it. I bet you he will. Like, I know every trick in the book on how to cheat a hearing test, or, you know, fake my way through conversations or different social settings. I've done it, and none of my, well, let's say 90% of the time my intentions weren't malicious, but at 8, 9, 10, 13 years old, of course they're going to try to get away with things. Of course they're going to say, I didn't hear. I turned my brother off all the time. I didn't hear when, you know, we're supposed to do chores. Never. So I think the best way to approach it is just to constantly have clear paths of communication with him. Let him see you struggle, let him see you being frustrated, but then let him see how you pick yourself up. We, at our age, I think we do it naturally. You know, I had a comment, somebody told me, she said, you seem so positive, but you do have bad days, don't you? Absolutely, I have bad days, more so bad moments now, because I express when I'm having a frustrated or a difficult time. I'll go to my car, I'll let out a sigh or a scream sometimes because, you know, the masks were difficult for me, or I just went about my day and I didn't have my husband in that public setting and I had no idea. We went to the fair last weekend and I was trying to order something and they said something about a straw. And I just, in my brain, thought, this is what I want and they're gonna want money. So I'm prepared to have a conversation about money. When she said something about a straw, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. She had no visual cues for me. 6 times later, my husband comes over, hey, this is what she was talking about. And I'm just like, I know that I'm capable. I know that I'm confident, I'm strong. And that just brought me down to my knees in that moment because I was hangry, you know, and just added on top of that. So like, when your son, you're gonna have to be that much more aware of where he's at. I learned something called HALT, HALT, hungry, alone, no, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Where are they? Are they, my husband knows if I'm hungry, we can't have a conversation until I'm fed. And it's not my fault or not my intolerance level. It's just, this is where I'm at because I am a mom of 2 kids. I'm often forgetting to feed myself. Little boys, they're playing, ignoring their hunger signs, and then boom, they're hungry. Moms are most likely ready, like, here, eat this right now. But giving him the space to be, showing him through role modeling when you're frustrated and what you can do about it, because he does have not good and bad, but hearing and not hearing. And hearing loss is such an invisible disability or situation that he will learn naturally, but he might not know what he's doing. You can see it. Does that make sense? Like he might not know that he naturally walks on the left side of people so that his right ear is there. He might not feel comfortable with telling people, can I walk on this side? You know, in college, my right ear was better. A lot of times the guy I was dating, I would switch sides, and he was a gentleman. He's like, no, like guys are supposed to walk on the outside of you. I'm protecting you from the cars or something. And it was just the conflict of the way we were being. I was like, oh, that's nice. Do you not want me to hear you then? I'm not going to talk to you at all. You can protect me, or like, it's okay. Just different scenarios. All scenarios are going to be different for him than they were for you. But if you can role model, you and your husband can role model for him when you're like, be open, not exaggerate, but be open with any times that that you might be frustrated or have difficulty, because it's only an opportunity for him to learn from you. I didn't have a role model to learn from, so I think that is just invaluable for him, and he gets to go about his life his own way too, because it's going to be different for him. Really long answer for one question.
This is Heidi. That was beautiful, actually. Thank you, Dr. Hugh. It's very informative, and it's always nice to hear other perspectives and insights and bring that shared experience to the table. That's really where we get a lot of our knowledge from. It's just tapping into other people that have been there, that understand that, or just to get a different perspective on things. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for lunch. We really, really thank you so much, Dr. Hugh, and appreciate your presentation. And I'm so happy that you were able to give us your time today. And just for a full disclaimer, you will notice that this session alone was recorded at the request of Dr. Hugh. She would like a copy of the recording for her own educational purposes. So we did offer that ability. And so we are recording that, and we'll be creating a link to send that over to you to be able to use for your purposes, Dr. Hugh. We'll be in touch with that.
No worries. Thank you.